Hey guys, it's the Geek, and today is the third part of our VGC 2015 guide. Today we're going to be talking about strategies that are very commonly used in the VGC 2015 meta, and how to use them and go up against them, and just how to identify them, because that's one of the biggest things. So, first of all, what are the most common general strategies is what many people obviously want to know. So, here I've got a list of common strategies. Rain and Trick Room are the most common ones that are very easy to identify most of the time, but also you're going to see them quite a lot, so you're going to get quite good at going against them, but they're still very strong, and that is why they're the most used. Then you have things like Sun, Sand, Perish Trap, which are also very evident out there, but not as much as Rain and Trick Room. And then things like Tailwind is just kind of not really its strategy, but sort of just like a random support that people can have. But I'm still going to talk about it just so you don't get completely destroyed by it. And then there's Hail and Hacks, which aren't really strategies that people use, but it's out there. The idea has been used before, so I'll go over it quickly. Now, the first one is Rain. Rain is probably the most used other than Trick Room, and it can be quite good if the person does it right. Now, it's normally not fully Rain, because they're only going to really have two Pokemon like Ludicolo or Politoed Kingdra, or even Politoed Mega Swampert. As you can see there, I said Politoed on every single one of those Rain teams. That's because Politoed is probably always going to be there to set up the Rain. The second you see a Politoed, you can expect it to be the one that's going to set up the Rain, because of its ability Drizzle, the second it comes into battle, it will be able to just set up the Rain. Now, there are many Pokemon that can abuse the Rain, the most common being Assault Vested and Ludicolo with like Ice Beam, Giga Drain, Scald, Fake Out. But there are also things like Kingdra, which can run many different sets, and also Mega Swampert, although people don't like to run Mega Swampert as often, just because Ludicolo, Kingdra fit that role better, and then Mega Swampert also takes up your Mega slot, and so it's not always that worth it. Now, some people do like to go more hardcore Rain and maybe have 3 to 4 of their Pokemon be Rain, so they'll have something like Mega Manectric or Thundurus Incarnate or Thundurus Therian that can use a very powerful Thunder in the Rain that'll just do lots of damage if you're not careful. But most of the time it'll just be 2 Pokemon, Politoed and any Swift Swim user, but do be careful of potential lightning types that do have Thunder. Now, the main goal of this strategy is just to be faster than your opponent, hit very hard, and pick up knockouts before they can take down your team. Well, obviously that's basically how you play VGC, but Rain provides that very well because of Swift Swim. Now, Ludicolo has tons of coverage, and so does Politoed. They get ice, water, grass, and it covers a lot of things, so you got to be very careful with it. Of course, there are things that can beat the Rain quite easily, and that's why it's in my counters list that we're going to get to later. Now, one thing to definitely identify is many Rain teams don't even have Protect, just because Politoed tends to be Scarfed now. That's what the best players tend to run, so I would expect that most of the time, although there have been things like Red Card and Eject Button, weird things like that, but for the most part you're going to see a Scarf offensive Politoed. Also, Ludicolo doesn't tend to run Protect when it normally is Assault Vested with Fake Out, Ice Beam, Giga Drain, Scald. So expecting that, you know they're not going to have Protect, but you're going to have to be careful because that turn 1 they can fake you out. But them not having Protect is very good because you can double target one of them and potentially take it out very quickly if you do it right. Now, Rain's not that hard to counter, just because it's used so often that you're gonna get very used to it as well. And it's not like the second they set up the Rain they win. It's not like a Trick Room type thing where it can potentially just sweep you if you're not ready for it. Because it's pretty easy. All you have to do if you have like a Thundurus Incarnate T-Wave Prankster, that instantly shuts down their Swift Swim user. So speed control in general is very good. If you get your own Tailwind, you're going to start speed tying with them, or even potentially beat them, just because Ludicolo's not that fast when you have your +2 and he has his +2. Another way you can potentially take down the Rain, so have your own weather team, although Rain tends to do a lot better against Sun and Sand, simply because water is super effective against both of those types, so do be careful about that, because Weather Wars can be challenging, but it's always a way to counter them. If you're good at Weather Wars, I suggest doing that to counter Rain, because it's a good counter. Another counter I say is hard counters, and that's something that can eat up hits from both these Pokemon and dish out very good damage to both. My favorite is Mega Venusaur. Mega Venusaur, the only way they can really kind of hit it is from an Ice Beam, and even then it barely does anything because of Thick Fat and just how bulky it is. And then it can hit that Ludicolo with a Sludge Bomb, can Giga Drain the Politoed, and it can just do tons of damage. So those are my counters to Rain. That's how people tend to use it. Moving on to the next strategy, Trick Room. Trick Room is very deadly. If you haven't been watching my live VGCs, I've been using it for the past 2 weeks alongside a Sand Team, comparing which one's better, and the Trick Room destroyed people. It was insane. Now, first thing you're going to want to identify when you're looking at a team is, are they all slow Pokemon? Because if they're all slow Pokemon, it's probably a Trick Room team. Also, do they have a Trick Room setter? So, a Trick Room setter would be something like Cresselia, as you can see on screen. Cresselia is probably the most commonly used, although there are things like Aromatisse and just other slow Trick Room setters that are out there. I know Mega Gengar and Gardevoir for fast Trick Room setters has always been a thing, and that's very interesting. Now, people also will have Trick Room sweepers, which they'll have someone to set it up like Cresselia, but even once it gets this Trick Room up, Cresselia doesn't really benefit from going first every turn because it's bulky and it's not going to really do much. But that's why it has things like Mawile or Azumarill or a slow Heatran or an Abomasnow or all these Trick Room sweepers that do very well when they go from being the slowest to the fastest. They've got a nice natural bulk, plus they just hit super hard now. So those are the Trick Room sweepers, and you do not want to let them sit in a Trick Room and destroy your team. Now, one of the most important things is this a half Trick Room or a full Trick Room? Because some people like to run 3 Pokemon that go under Trick Room and then like 3 Pokemon that don't, or maybe 4 or 5 Pokemon that go in Trick Room and then maybe one like Choice Scarflando T or a Thundurus or something. Now, identifying that is very important, because if they do set up the Trick Room and you do take out the only Trick Room sweepers that they do bring and get rid of the Cresselia or something, and then all they have is like their Lando T and Thundurus in the back, and they set up the Trick Room, then they're in trouble. So identifying that is very good. Also, they could potentially lead with those fast Pokemon and then set up Trick Room later on, so do be careful of that. Now, there are many counters to this, and Trick Room is very easily beatable, but at the same time it can really easily beat you because people are ready for this. Now, Taunt is one of the best ways. Just taunt Cresselia, don't let it get its Trick Room up, but you gotta be careful because the majority of the time they have Mental Herb, or they're willing to just take the taunt and they'll just go offensive for a little bit and then they'll set up the Trick Room later. Or you gotta be careful because they can fake out your taunt user, and that's a bit of a problem. So, our next thing is Spore. Now, I run safety goggles on my Cresselia because I do not like this, but Spore, if the other team doesn't have safety goggles, I know that Breloom Kangaskhan or Breloom Liepard or Amoonguss even are deadly to Trick Room teams. They're going to just spread Spore like crazy before they can even get a Trick Room up, and they won't, because you Spore their Trick Room user, and then you Spore everything else, and Spore will always go before the Trick Room, so you're always going to be able to get it off and just put everything to sleep, and then it can honestly tear Trick Room teams apart. It was my biggest challenge when I was using my Trick Room team. Another thing is Fake Out. Now, this only buys you 1 turn, but if you Fake Out the Trick Room user, obviously it's not going to get the Trick Room up till next turn. But if you do Fake It Out, hit it with a powerful attack, and then next turn double into it and take it out, that is something you can do. It's very risky and could potentially put you back for a turn, but it is good if you can get rid of the Trick Room setter if they only have 1. Another thing is just to hit really hard. I know this is probably almost impossible on Cresselia, but something like Jellicent, I know a lot of my counters to Jellicent setting up Trick Room back on my Mega Venusaur team was just to use Giga Drain and then Thunderbolt with Rotom Wash, and normally that could take out a Jellicent if they weren't max special defense, so just hitting very hard. So something like Hydreigon does that very well, and that's potentially how you can stop the Trick Room. Now, a lot of the time that is very risky because sometimes they'll barely live because they're EV'd to take hits. I know Bisharp does very well at that role. Knockoff can do a ton, and then just one more hit and it could potentially go down. Although again, do be careful of Fake Out because then your hitting hard tactic could just fall. Now, once the Trick Room goes up, what are you going to do about it? Your best bet is to try to stall them out as quickly as possible. Obviously, they're going to last 4 turns, 5 turns including the first one, which doesn't affect the speed. So if you have bulky Pokemon, if you have Pokemon that can protect, if you have Pokemon that can switch in and out, dishing out Intimidates and using Snarl and things like that, just to kind of make your opponent be forced to switch as well, that'll definitely stall out their Trick Room turns. Make sure you get rid of their Trick Room setter though before you do this, because once you stall out the Trick Room they can always set it up again. But that's definitely one of the best things to do the second they get up Trick Room, because they're going to start hitting hard. You're going to want to get rid of their Trick Room, so stall it out, hope that you're bulky enough. And the last thing I put here is priority. If you've got a lot of priority, Trick Room's not going to really be a problem. Now, a lot of priority hits don't hit that hard, but they can still hit first, and that can be quite a big thing. Normally, a priority hit might not be a one-shot, but hitting it turn 1 with one of your more powerful attacks. Let's say, here's an example, let's say you're a Bishop, you use knockoff on something. Alright, you do tons of damage, you get rid of their item, the next turn you just use Sucker Punch and KO them. That can be very big because they only got one attack off on you, and maybe you ate it and then hit them hard. So priority is very good because it does not get affected by Trick Room, unless they use priority as well. That's a bit of a problem, but again, like I said, priority is pretty weak in base power, so they probably won't use it when they're the fastest. Alright, the next is Sun. Sun is pretty interesting because it's normally not a full Sun team. It tends to just be Charizard Y boosting himself, and that's about it. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a Ninetales here and there on a full Sun team. So Ninetales definitely hasn't been used. I've probably run into it like once or twice in all my time of playing VGC, but it's still there. It's got the draw. It's still a setter. I'm going to put it out there if you want to try using it instead of Charizard Y. But honestly, Charizard Y is the best Sun setter. Now, like I said, most often it's Charizard Y by itself, and it's not a Sun team. It's just Charizard Y because he gets access to Solar Beam, Heat Wave, Overheat, all these things that really enjoy being in the sun, but then he doesn't really need any partner that enjoys the sun as well, because honestly there aren't too many good Pokemon that can abuse the sun, but there are the occasional sun sweepers like Venusaur, Heatran, and Victory Bell. Victory Bell is very interesting because I used it before. It's got an interesting moveset, so I tried it out and it does okay, but Venusaur is Chlorophyll and so is Victory Bell, so that's kind of why I put them as Sun Sweepers, because occasionally you will see a normal Venusaur next to a Charizard Y, just because they can be a pledge team and they can hit very hard and fast in the sun, so do be careful of that. I do know in Japan that Heatran Charizard Y is very common, and it's starting to get more and more common as we go. Scarf Heatran next to a Charizard Y is quite good, I have to say. Having the sun up next to two Pokemon like that, if you do not resist or are immune to their heat waves, they can both just spam that, or even go for an overheat if the double heat wave won't KO. But in the sun, that's gonna destroy your team if you're not careful, so do be careful of that. Now, counters is obviously, like I said, Charizard Y is the most common Pokemon, so how do you beat Charizard Y? You throw a Pebble at it. It is 4 times weak to rock type moves. Normally its defense is so bad that it's not going to be able to take any Rock Slide or Stone Edge, or it doesn't even have to be Stab. Most of the time it will take out Charizard Y. So throw a Pebble at that thing, it's going to come crashing down. One of the best ways to beat it is to have Rain or Sand in the back, and then the second they lead with their Charizard Y or something, you wait for it to Mega Evolve and set up the Sun, alright? And then the next turn you just send these two Pokemon in, take out their Sun, get this special defense boost if you're a Sand team, or be a Rain team and just cut down their Fire type attacks, and then take away their Weather, and then the next turn you're going to hit them harder because Sand can just Rock Slide that Charizard Y and Heatran away, while the Rain can just use something like Scald or Surf to destroy them, so that's very nice. Now, Charizard Y is a very good sun setter simply because it comes in and it doesn't set up the sun yet, but once it Mega Evolves it does. Now that allows it, if you lead with it and they lead with like a Politoed or something, you can Mega Evolve and you'll get the sun up for the turn and not them because you got up the sun second. Now, another way to beat this is, of course, speed control. This is how you can pretty much beat any weather team, actually, is just getting that Prankster Thunder Wave with like a Thundurus, or just getting up a Tailwind or something to make their speed boost useless. Now, you do have to be careful because they still have that advantage from having the weather up, so that's why I also highly suggest having resistances. One of the best way to do this is Heatran. That's why you have to have your own fire types to easily stop Sun. Heatran is a huge counter. Maybe you can't hit them that hard, but they can't hit you at all unless Charizard Y is running HP Ground, which honestly they have been starting to run, so do be careful about that. Alright, next we have the Sand. Sand is something that's not as used as often, but it is very good and it is definitely out there. quite a lot, pretty much the same as Sun maybe, but that's simply because Charizard Y is used a lot. Normally when you see Sand, it's not going to just be Tyranitar by itself, it's going to be Tyranitar and Excadrill almost every single time, and these two are very good, so I understand. So the setter is almost always Tyranitar, or even Mega Tyranitar. I've seen Hippowdon once or twice, but honestly, it's going to be Tyranitar. Tyranitar is very good at it, and Rock Dark is a pretty interesting typing, so he's got that going for it. And there's many sets that you can run on Tyranitar. I'm going to quickly go over them, I guess. You can run like a bulky Assault Vest, maybe, a Choice Scarf, which honestly I think is the best, or just some sort of Chople Berry defensive one that can have Protect, so your Excadrill can Earthquake for a turn. But obviously the Scarf one is a bit scary because they can just double Rock Slide on you. But now we're going to go into the Abusers. These are the Pokemon that have Sand Rush, so Excadrill and Stoutland. Stoutland, not often used, but it is out there. I tried using it, I didn't like it. So honestly, I like Excadrill the best. It hits very hard. Put a Focus Sash on that thing, it'll be able to stay in there for a bit longer. And Iron Head, Earthquake, Rock Slide, it just provides tons of nice coverage. You can even put Drow Run if you want to keep your Tyranitar in there, but you still want to hit hard with ground type moves. So that's definitely that. You also have to be careful of rock types because they do get a special defense boost in the sand, so Tyranitar gets his special defense boost, or any other rock type Pokemon they decide to use in sand, but honestly it tends to just be Tyranitar and Excadrill. Now, normally, like I said, this is only going to be 2 Pokemon. It's not going to be a full Sand team, because there's honestly no point. It's just Tyranitar, Excadrill, maybe Tyranitar, Stoutland. Maybe if they're interesting, they'll be like Mega Tyranitar, Excadrill, Stoutland, and they'll be more into the Sand. But honestly, 2 Pokemon tends to be what they do. They'll either lead with it, or they just won't bring it at all. And so maybe you shouldn't try to overstretch countering it, but definitely be ready for it. Now, counters are type advantage. As much as these Pokemon will have a decent bulk in the sand, as much as they're going to hit you hard, straight up type advantage does beat them pretty well. Venusaur, Rotom Wash, these things that can eat up their hits and just spit back super effective attacks are going to deter these away. Powerful fighting types, maybe not Terrakion because you're going to get hit by an Earthquake and stuff, so do be careful of that. But just hitting this team with super effective attacks and making sure that you can eat up hits will make these people want to switch out or just let themselves go down. So type advantage, I know it sounds kind of silly because it's like, of course you want type advantage in any game, is probably the best way to beat sand. While rain and sun, it doesn't always work because of the fact that in rain, water type, fire type goes down, and then in sun, water type moves go down. So while in sand, there aren't any of those. The next one is support. Now, what I mean by support here is, of course, you can have like T-Wave and Tailwind again, but sometimes speed control isn't always that needed. What I mean by support is Follow Me can be pretty big. Now, a lot of the time they have spread moves, so maybe Wide Guard can be pretty big for that. So Wide Guard, Follow Me, Rage Powder, and even like Spore and stuff, all that can really kind of destroy this team apart if they aren't ready for it. Another thing is bulk. This team, as you can see, Excadrill tends to run the Sash and it can't take 2 hits, so if you're bulky enough to hit him twice, then that's definitely very good. They want to just be able to pick up 1-hit knockouts, of course, but being bulky enough to the point where they have to sit there and hit you with 5 Rock Slides, you're going to get some attacks out and you're going to dish out some nice damage, so bulk can kind of destroy a sand team. Of course, you can always just take down the sand using rain is probably the best, because with sun, their rock slides are still going to probably one-shot you, so do be careful, but using rain is definitely a counter to sand. The next one is Perish Trap. Now this has definitely been going up in usage because of Mega Gengar and because Wolfie Glick recently used it and destroyed with it. So it's very annoying, and it's also easy to bluff. This is something that I'm going to go into probably more in depth a bit now. I'll go into depth right now. They'll have a Gengar and then maybe a Kangaskhan, and you're thinking, oh gosh, well, what's the Mega? And so you're instantly kind of thinking Kangaskhan, because Kangaskhan's always Mega. And then they hit you with the Perish Trap because it's Mega Gengar and the Kangaskhan's just a regular Kangaskhan. So it is pretty easy to bluff, so you're going to have to be careful of that. Next we have the Trappers. The most commonly used trappers are Gothitelle and Mega Gengar. Now obviously Mega Gengar is so good because it can use Perish Song and trap you, but then Gothitelle is also just a very good bulky trapper that if Mega Gengar goes down, they can always go ahead and use Gothitelle, or they can switch Mega Gengar out for Gothitelle. As you can see, they're both very weak to Dark, so do keep that in mind. Now, the team tends to be pretty bulky, and it wants to stall out turns. That's basically the goal of the Perish Trap. They're going to have things like Fake Out and Protect, just so that they can kind of make you not attack for that turn and waste a turn there, because obviously they have to wait 3 turns for the Perish Song to kill you. And then things just like Intimidate and Spore or Rage Powder and Snarl, all these things that can kind of disrupt your attacking and allow them to tick down the turns and you not hitting what you want to hit. Now, excuse me, the users of the Perish Song, you're going to have things like Mega Gengar, which is obviously the most common one because it not only can it trap you, but it can also use Perish Song. And then you're going to have something like Politoed, which is also very common because it can be run pretty bulky, and it has some pretty interesting moves like Encore and stuff, and then it also can Perish Song, so it's a bit annoying. I do know Lapras and Altaria get it. I don't ever really see them using it though, but I guess I decided to put them down because I wouldn't be surprised if you found one once in a while. Now, there are many good counters to Perish Trap. Now, obviously the trap ability is the Shadow Tag. That's what Gothitelle and Mega Gengar have, so one way to beat it is just having a Ghost type that can switch out, or having Switch Initiative. This is just so you don't get trapped. So Switch Initiative is something like Volt Switch or U-Turn. Using moves like that, you will be able to switch out even if they have the Shadow Tag. So being able to have things like that, you can just kind of make their Perish Song kind of useless, because once you switch out, the Perish Song goes away on that Pokemon, and they'd have to use it again, but then that's just a waste of another turn. You can hit them while they're using Perish Song. Another way is just to taunt them, because these Pokemon like to use things like I said above, Protect, Spore, Perish Song, even Snarl, Rage Powder, all these things just to kind of stall out and stuff. They don't want to actually hit you, they don't need to hit you, but using Taunt will really hinder them, especially when many of these don't actually carry attacking moves, so it can be very useful. Taunting Mega Gengar is one of the best things you can do, simply because it's gonna just want to Perish Song and Protect, and then maybe hit you with a Shadow Ball or a Detect or something like that. Also, very hard hitters is kind of a counter to this. If you hit the opponent super hard on that first turn before they get off any Perish Song and stuff, then you can kind of destroy your opponent. Hydreigon does this very well with Dark Pulse, being able to body Mega Gengar and Gothitelle completely, so do keep that in mind. It is definitely a way that you can beat this, although you do have to be careful of things like Fake Out, Intimidate, Snarl, all this whatnot. Now, moving on to the next strategy, Perish Trap. To summarize, very annoying, but easy to beat if the opponent doesn't have a good team on it. Although, do research Wolfie Glick's team if you want a good team idea. I wouldn't just straight up copy it, because everyone knows the team already, and I've beaten it before, so it's definitely beatable. But you'll get an idea of what's good. Next, we have Tailwind and just speed control in general. Now, this isn't much of a strategy, it tends to be more of a counter to the other types, but because I've said it so many times, I'm gonna go ahead and just say what it kind of is. Now, a lot of the time people will actually use Tailwind and speed control with these mid-speed tier Pokemon such as Mega Gardevoir, Mega Kangaskhan, all these Pokemon that don't hit that super fast speed, and they don't really need it, but if they do hit it, then they're going to destroy you, because they're going to hit so hard. They're always going to be hitting first, and it's going to be very annoying. So Tailwind setters, Talonflame is one of the best, simply because it's got Gale Wings, so its Tailwind is priority. Then you have something like Zapdos, which is more bulky and can do it. You have the Lati twins, so Latios, they're rarely used for that. I have a Latios on my Mega Venusaur team, but it does not have Tailwind, because I don't see a point of it. I do know Altaria gets it, so that's kind of there. Especially Altaria is another one of those mid-speed tier Pokemon. Mega Altaria does do quite well under Tailwind. And then Suicune is probably one of the most common Tailwind users, simply because it's bulky, and maybe you're going to be Snarling, Scalding, Ice Beam, and then hit with an occasional Tailwind when you see an opening and when it's going to be useful. Another form of speed control here is T-Wave and Icy Wind. So this is just straight up speed control. Thunder Wave from just about Thundurus Incarnate is about it. That's going to hit you with Thunder Wave. There are occasional other Pokemon that will use it, but Thunder Wave cuts your speed down to 1/4, so it kind of destroys Scarf users that are relying on that speed. It destroys Pokemon in Tailwind. It destroys all these Sun and Rain Pokemon with their boosts. The only problem is electric types can't get T-Waved, and ground types can't be thunder waved. I know glare kind of goes around that, so that's something that's very interesting. So something like superior, I love doing that, but otherwise thunder wave is a very good form of speed control, and if you thunder wave just about everything on the opponent's team, it's even better than setting up a tailwind, because tailwind can be stalled out. Now next we have icy wind. This is something that occasionally if the Pokemon doesn't really have an answer to, you can kind of just spam icy wind once or twice, and then you're cutting their speed down to a point where you're going to outspeed them, and it's just nice because it deals damage to both the opponents and lowers both the opponent's speed, while thunder wave can only hit one at a time, and icy wind affects just about everything, although you do have to be careful of icy winding a Bisharp and giving it that +2, because then it can just start sucker punching. Now counters to all these to tailwind specifically is it's very easy to stall. It's only lasts 4 turns, just like Trick Room, and unlike Trick Room, you can potentially still outspeed certain things, and it doesn't completely destroy you, because you can use things like Thunder Wave and Icy Wind, or even your own Tailwind, to just kind of counteract their Tailwind, while in Trick Room you couldn't really do that. But that's why Trick Room is also another counter to Tailwind, because they just gave themselves a speed boost. You'd use a Trick Room, and guess what? You're the fastest now. So that's always an option. Also, bulky Pokemon that don't really care for going first don't mind if the opponent gets a Tailwind. I know, like Mega Venusaur, Rotom Wash, maybe even Heatran. The opponent gets up a Tailwind, it's like, I don't care, because was probably going to go last anyways, and I'm bulky enough to take hits that I don't mind. Now, this isn't really a strategy, but I'm just going to go ahead and acknowledge it at the end. Hail and Hacks. Hail is a potential weather strategy, but until it gets a buff, it's really not common, and it's not going to be out there. I've seen occasional Hail Trick Room teams, and I have to admit that's not too bad, but otherwise Hail by itself is honestly not a viable strategy, just because there aren't too many Pokemon that really benefit from Hail. The only really dangerous thing is the fact that Mega Abomasnow can hit you with a 100% accurate Blizzard, which is pretty scary. So Trick Room Hail though is definitely scary, because like I said, Mega Abomasnow 100% Blizzard can be very scary. Now onto the hack strategy. This isn't really a strategy too much, but I have seen people use it because in a way it kind of works. Basically you hit them with Prankster, Thunder Waves, and Swaggers from things like Thundurus, and then you just spam Rock Slide with like maybe I know Blaziken does it well because he gets speed boost, so he'll be fast soon, and then things like Lando T that are scarfed and fast anyways, so you just spam T-Wave, Swagger, and Rock Slide, and if you hit a Pokemon with all 3 of these in one turn, or like you hit them with a T-Wave, next turn you Swagger and Rock Slide them, the chance of them hitting is very, very low. I don't know the exact math to that, but it's basically each one gives them a 30% chance of not hitting, so you gotta flip a coin like 3 times, and a coin that lands on heads 70% of the time and tails 30% of the time basically, and you gotta do that 3 times and hope you pull through, and it's almost hacks if you do pull through. That's not really a good strategy though, because again it's just relying for luck, but it is out there. I've been attacked by it before, but again it's very beatable because it is just luck. So those aren't really viable strategies. Hail is something that I really hope they buff, because it's honestly something that I want to see. Now, thank you guys for watching. That is the end of the VGC guide. Please leave a like on the video if it helped you out. Comment down below any more questions you have. I will answer them. But other than that, subscribe, because I'll continue to post daily, and goodbye.